The biggest mistake people are making about Pi Network right now is thinking the story is simple. Some people look at the price and say the project is finished. Others ignore every problem and act like Pi is guaranteed to explode overnight. But the truth in 2026 is somewhere in the middle, and that is exactly what we are talking about today. Right now, Pi Network is one of the most debated crypto projects in the world. On one side, supporters point to major developments, exchange listings, smart contract upgrades, and millions of verified users. On the other side, critics point at the massive price collapse, delayed ecosystem growth, missing Binance support, and growing concerns about whether real adoption is happening fast enough. And honestly, both sides have valid arguments. If you look back to February 2025, Pi reached incredible highs shortly after launch. At one point, the token climbed above $3 and excitement across the community was at its peak. Fast forward to May 2026, and Pi is trading around 17 cents. That is a massive drop of more than 90% from its all-time high. For many people, a collapse like that would signal the end of a project. But Pi Network did not disappear. In fact, while the price was falling, the development side of the ecosystem continued moving forward. That is what makes Pi such an unusual project right now. The market performance looks weak, but the infrastructure behind the scenes continues to grow. One of the biggest moments for Pi this year came when Kraken officially listed the token for spot trading shortly before Pi Day 2026. That was a major milestone because Kraken is considered one of the more trusted and regulated exchanges in the crypto industry, especially in the United States. For years, Pi supporters kept asking whether major exchanges would ever take the project seriously. The Kraken listing was the first real sign that large regulated platforms may finally be opening the door. The announcement immediately boosted market confidence and trading activity increased quickly. Many pioneers saw it as proof that Pi was slowly moving out of the experimental phase and into wider crypto acceptance. Even though Binance and Coinbase still have not listed Pi, Kraken support gave the community something important: legitimacy. Another major development happened behind the scenes with KYC verification. Millions of users had been stuck waiting for approval for months, and in some cases more than a year. These were people who had mined Pi consistently but still could not fully access the ecosystem because their verification process remained incomplete. In early 2026, a large number of those delayed accounts were finally cleared and activated. That may not sound exciting to outsiders, but for the Pi community, it was huge. It meant millions of additional users could finally participate in the Mainnet economy, transfer tokens, and interact with the growing ecosystem. It also showed that the core team was still actively working on one of the project's biggest long-term problems. Then came the launch of Pi Launchpad. This was another important step because it introduced a framework for developers to create projects directly inside the Pi ecosystem. Instead of relying only on speculation and trading, the goal is to create actual applications, services, and utility-based systems powered by Pi. The Launchpad is still early and much of it remains in testing, but it represents something bigger. It shows that Pi Network is trying to build an entire digital economy instead of functioning as just another cryptocurrency token. Whether that vision succeeds is still uncertain, but at least the infrastructure is beginning to appear. At the same time, the network itself has continued upgrading technically. The rollout of new protocol versions throughout 2026 has focused on stability, scalability, and smart contract functionality. The introduction of smart contracts is especially important because it puts Pi into competition with larger blockchain ecosystems that already support decentralized applications and DeFi systems. This is where things become interesting. For years, critics argued that Pi lacked real utility. But with smart contracts entering the ecosystem, Pi now has the technical foundation needed for developers to create decentralized apps, digital marketplaces, token systems, and financial tools directly on the network. The challenge, however, is that technical capability does not automatically create adoption. That is the biggest issue Pi network still faces today. Even with millions of users and expanding infrastructure, real-world usage remains limited. Most Pi holders are still simply holding their tokens and waiting for future price increases rather than actively spending or using them. Merchant adoption is still relatively small compared to the size of the community, and decentralized app activity remains in its early stages. This creates a major disconnect between the scale of the community and the actual economic activity happening inside the ecosystem. Pi has millions of verified users, but the number of people regularly using Pi for transactions, purchases, or services is still far lower than many expected by this stage. Then there is the supply issue. One reason the price has struggled so much is because of continuous token unlocks. A large percentage of Pi's total supply is still locked, and new tokens continue entering circulation every month. That creates constant selling pressure on the market. In simple terms, demand has not yet grown fast enough to absorb the increasing supply. As more tokens become available, the market needs more buyers to keep prices stable. Without enough demand, prices naturally remain under pressure. This is one reason why many investors are still watching Binance so closely. A Binance listing would dramatically increase liquidity, visibility, and access to global traders. It could potentially create a major shift in market momentum. But so far, Binance has remained silent despite strong community support for a listing. And that uncertainty has created frustration among many pioneers. Some early supporters believed Pi would already be fully established by now with widespread adoption and stronger pricing. Instead, the project still feels like it is somewhere between development and maturity. The vision is ambitious, but the timeline has been much longer than many expected. At the same time, it would also be unfair to say that Pi has achieved nothing. The network is clearly more advanced today than it was a year ago. Exchange access has improved, smart contracts are arriving, developer tools are expanding, and the technical ecosystem is stronger. The real question now is whether those developments can eventually translate into a functioning economy. That is what the second half of 2026 will likely decide. If developers begin building successful applications inside the Pi ecosystem, if users start spending Pi more actively, and if adoption finally starts matching the size of the community, then this period may eventually be remembered as the foundation stage before major growth. But if utility remains weak and token supply continues outpacing demand, the market could continue struggling despite all the technical progress being made. So the reality is this: Pi network in 2026 is neither a complete failure nor a guaranteed success story. It is a project still trying to prove itself after one of the most dramatic price declines in recent crypto memory. The infrastructure is improving. The community is still massive. Development continues moving forward. But the ecosystem still has major challenges to solve before it can fully deliver on its original vision. And right now, the entire future of Pi may depend on whether real-world adoption finally catches up with the scale of its global community. So what do you think? Has Pi already found its bottom, or could prices still fall further before recovery begins? And out of everything that happened this year, which development surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want more realistic updates without the hype, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next breakdown.